So today I've got Neil Sherman from Minnesota. Hi, Neil.
Hi.
And I've got Diana Woods of Colorado and Sean Michael Chavez, who's in Mexico. And so, hey, we're just going to jump right in if you all are ready. Allison Conyers says, hi, Neil. All right. So, Neil, you are up. So I first heard about you from a couple artists who were in the Coors show, and just absolutely fell in love with your work
Thank you.
from the minute, really, the moment I saw it. It's just beautiful work. And would you tell everybody where you live and how you live? Because
Yeah. How I live is pretty interesting sometimes. Minnesota, and I'm on the northern part of the state, on the north side of Lake Superior, about 40 minutes from the Canadian border. So really out in the wilderness. The nearest the nearest metropolitan where you can go to a movie theater or a Target is about 2 hours away. In a little town that I live in is about 1,500 people. So it's a pretty small, remote area. I live, a little fun fact, I live in a little tiny house outside of town that has electricity but no running water. So I carry my water in, heat with firewood. I forget what the saying was, but before enlightenment, split wood, carry water. After enlightenment, split wood, carry water.
yeah.
So,
Perfect.
yeah, that's how I live and where I live.
Yeah. Well, and I think that to me, at least when I'm looking at your work, it really inspires all of these paintings. I mean, talk about an authentic vision of what you're painting. This is what you're surrounded by.
Yeah, there's no lack of subject matter just from a natural beauty standpoint, but also from a lifestyle standpoint. Like, people, a lot of people heat with firewood. I've done a number of firewood paintings, piles of, people's wood piles, and the seasons are hugely important to people up here in terms of recreation and.
In what way?
Overall.
Yeah, would you talk about the seasons? Because I would think there would be two, like winter.
Well, yeah, that's the joke. What is it? 2 months of summer and 9 months of good sledding or something like that. I forget how it goes, but
nice.
Yeah, I think the misconception a little bit is that Minnesota is just frozen all the time, and it is a long winter. But we get beautiful summers. This last summer was probably one of the most beautiful that I can remember. It was particularly for northern Minnesota, where it can be, kind of cold sometimes, but it was just beautiful and sunny. The falls autumn is beautiful. A lot of maple trees in northern Minnesota, so deep reds. Similar to Colorado, we have aspen trees, so you get that yellow. It's just amazing. In winter, that's beautiful too. It's just snow. The sun is low. People love to go out and ski and snowshoe. And one of the paintings we'll talk about has a connection to dog sledding, which I have. In my long time ago, I did a little bit of that and still have an interest in. So, yeah, it's people take advantage of the seasons up here.
Yeah, and just you're outdoors. Like, I mean, I wouldn't sign up for the no running water part, but everything else is fabulous.
It's a joke in the county that the area I live in is a very tourist area, and there's a lot of artists that live in the area. So we're well known for that. But the running joke is like, you have to be an artist in Cook County. You have to, either live without water or electricity or both for a time.
Well, it doesn't seem to be slowing you down on the painting and the gorgeous subject matter and what you're bringing us for the Coors show. It's always just a wonderful surprise every year.
Yeah, thanks.
So speaking of dog sledding, let's jump into that. Certainly go to our website, CoorsWesternArt.com, and you can see the images there and click on them and make them larger and all that good stuff. Oh, right on. Okay, so this is Bearskin Lake.
Yeah. So this painting has been sort of a muse of mine, I guess I would have to say, over the years. A friend of mine who is also interested in dog sledding was working with a guy who was contracted with one of the local lodges at resorts to do dog sledding for his guests. And my buddy of mine invited me to come out with him one time. And this is his setup on the lake is the teepee. And then off to the, around the corner here off the canvas, he would have his dog team strung out with their dog houses on the ice. And then guests would come out and he would give rides up and down the lake. And the teepee was acted as sort of a warming house for guests that were maybe waiting. But I just fell in love with the scene, and it's so, it's so indicative of the native culture that's part of northern Minnesota, but it's also a scene that, doesn't show up very often.
Yeah.
And so I had a painting in the show last year that had the teepee with the dogs in it. And this painting, this particular scene, I just keep going back to paint again and again. This particular painting, which is 16 by 20 inches, I painted from a reference of a plein air sketch that I did that was smaller, just to make it a little bit larger.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I love all the texture you're getting too in that, the frozen hillside behind.
Yeah.
That's
a little glare. I really like working with big shapes, and, initially they're kind of flat, just sort of formless shapes, but I love working into them and trying to pull out little subtle details and forms. So at a distance, it reads as like a nice grouping of trees, but as you get closer, there's little bits of interest and brushwork that's kind of fun to look at.
And you know what? It is really capturing that, it's that cold, still morning air. It feels like, to me, it's really
give you a little sense of scale, I guess.
Yeah. Hey, so let's talk about some of the other paintings too that you
Sure.
And you sent us a video that inspired Rose Lake Swans.
Yep. That's probably my favorite painting of the group. So the story of this painting was, I had this a number of years ago. I had this idea to teach a class in the wilderness. And for those who don't know, northern Minnesota is home to the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. It's a 1 million acre protected wildlife area, wilderness area, that's really only accessible by canoe.
There you go.
So that particular painting was, I had this idea for doing a painting class in the wilderness where we teamed up with one of the outfitters and we paddled into a lake that was probably a couple miles away. And then we camped for a few days and just went from our base camp out to a location to paint. And on this particular spot, we came across these two swans that were kind of just walking up the path trying to get to the other side. And we went down and started painting, and they came back down the trail and just popped into the water and sort of swam by. It was really kind of an unusual experience. Usually you think of the wilderness when people talk about wildlife encounters, like they see a bear or maybe a moose or something like that. Fox, those are common, but swans is sort of unusual. So that painting, it kind of sat in my studio for a while. I knew I wanted to do something with it, and then I remembered the swan video, and I thought, oh, that would be a great way to really sort of, give just a little bit of a punch to, painting of a rock.
Yeah.
Some people might find that a little uninteresting. It's still, I painted it anyway, it's still beautiful, but I just think adding the swans in there was just a little touch of elegance, I guess.
Well, and I think that gets to the heart of your work and what is so personal about your work is that this is your life, this is your surroundings. And
Yeah.
and seeing that video, I was surprised too, because I guess I just think of, I see the geese and the ducks around in an urban setting, but to see them in a wild setting and just to walk past you and not as if you're part of the setting kind of surprising.
Yeah, it was strange. Like, I would have thought they would have, because they were with their goslings, I would have thought they would have reacted a lot more aggressively.
Yeah.
Like, I have another video where we literally walked within 2 feet of us, just passing on the trail. And I was really, it was interesting to watch because they were very cautious and just sort of slowly moved by, but didn't act aggressively. And it was really kind of a neat interaction with nature. Nothing, you're always afraid of meeting a bear on the trail or running into some aggressive animal, but this was really beautiful experience.
Maybe swans really like artists. Hey, would you talk about Who Dat? It's right over your shoulder there. You must have seen this then. This is...
Well, interestingly, no. And this was part of, particularly this year with COVID, for me, it's been kind of an opportunity to just sort of, kind of take stock of everything I've been doing painting wise. And one thing that's really been interested in me of late is, taking my experiences of painting outdoors and the different light effects I've seen and different stuff, and trying to be more creative in taking aspects of those scenes and putting them together as a painting. So this particular painting was really just born out of an idea that I had sketched on a piece of like a piece of mat board. It was just an idea that I had. Maybe it would be a dog in a snowstorm with kind of wind whipping by. And then it sort of grew into another painting I was doing was of an idea that I had was for a man sitting around a campfire. And then I thought, well, it'd be interesting if maybe it was the man and his dog. And one thing, having spent a little time around dogs, and maybe people have had this experience, if you're just sitting around casually with your dog and there's a noise somewhere, sometimes they'll kind of pop up and look around.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was the idea for this painting, was to have some sort of action going on outside the canvas that you don't really know what it is, but I added some little sparks and a lot of smoke to maybe indicate that there's somebody like throwing a log on the fire that was going down or something like that. And then just having this dog pop up and kind of sort of quietly wondering what's going on over there. And I just thought it was interesting. We've all sat around the campfire with people and animals, and it seems like the focus is always on what the action of the people are doing. This one I wanted to have some sort of, give you an idea of maybe what the dog was thinking.
Yeah, right. And you know what? Like, this is something that I just absolutely love and about your work is when you send us these night scenes.
Yeah.
There's so much going on in them. And this is what I'll tell you, this is one of those paintings that made me just a little extra sad that I'm not getting any work in person this year.
Yeah.
Because I really love just holding on to your night scenes and looking in all the darkness in them and seeing everything that you've put in there. And so I think people just have to trust that this is just incredible. And there's so much happening beneath the surface of these paintings of yours, and especially this one.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Hey, so, okay, let's look at these other pieces of yours too, or talk about them. The February Thaw. And is that a little church, like a little country?
It could be.
Oh, okay.
So again, this is another sort of I would call it a hybrid painting. So it's not it wasn't a painting done on location, but it was inspired by a painting that I had done on location and by just a natural event from around here. There's a group of us Minnesota painters that in January we get together and we go up onto the edge of the Boundary Waters and paint for a week and kind of basically in the wilderness. And one week we do this in January. And one time, I think it was last year, it was all hoarfrost for the whole entire week. And I just thought, oh, this would be great to incorporate this idea of hoarfrost. And I had this painting that I liked. It was a scene that I had really originally painted in Vermont. And I just thought, oh, it'd be really fun to, come up with a hoarfrost scene. So I took the scene in the painting is sort of as it was painted on location. I just changed the light effect and added the snow. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. It's not necessarily like an exact, duplication of what might happen in nature, but I love the effect.
Yeah. This isn't really like, I'm loving what you're saying about the work and where it's going, that instead of just painting, like going out and painting and being faithful to it, now you're bringing in your experience to it and more like the feelings that you have for this area and nature and all of that into the work. So if the work is bringing even more to the audience now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's so many things like the next painting is the Junkyard Moon.
Yeah.
And there's so many, I think any plein air painter will attest to this. Like oftentimes you're outside painting and you're working on a scene and, you're working along diligently. And for whatever reason, you stop and turn around and you look, and then you go, oh my gosh, there's this beautiful scene that's happening right behind me.
Right.
And, you're in some ways you're sort of helpless because you're already committed to this other painting. But so on this particular day, we were actually painting at a junkyard, and I don't know if the painting wasn't going very well or something. I was starting to clean up, and I turned around, and there's that scene with the moon coming up and the pine trees, and so I just did a quick little sketch on the inside of my paint box, and that's what I used as reference for that painting.
So yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's again, so many part of these ideas for these imaginative works come from like, oh, I wish I could have painted that scene or that light effect.
Yeah. And
so I'll take elements of one painting and try to remember that light effect that I saw before and mash those together, kind of create. So,
am I hearing this correctly? You're working from your studies out on location or small paintings.
Yeah.
But not from photos. Like these are now coming out of you.
Yeah, no, I have sort of I won't say aversion, but I'm kind of a purist. Like I really try not to rely on photographs. Admittedly, I did use a reference photo for the shape of the dog in the Who Dat painting. But the light effect, I just was completely based on other experiences sitting around campfires and so I try not to be, I find for myself, like if I have a photograph in front of me, or if I know that I can work from a photograph, I think it gives me an easy way out for a painting that's not going well. Like, oh, if I'm working on something, it's not going well, I'll just take a photo and work from it later versus, and this has happened to me before, you're working on a painting and it's not going well and okay, I'm going to take a break, get some coffee, whatever, go for a quick walk or something, come back, and you continue working on the painting, and it actually comes around, and it works itself out. Yeah. So that experience is way more valuable than just like, for me, that's part of the reason I try not to use work from photos. Not that there's anything wrong with it,
sure.
But that's just a personal choice, I guess.
I think the way, and I'm wondering if you would just show the last two pieces that we talked about, the Junkyard Moon and the, sure. And also you all can see these on the website too. And, as you're saying this, Neil, to me, I'm kind of sensing that photographs would be this impediment to what you're doing in a way. It would add a distance to your work in
Yeah. Well, I think too, sometimes you can get locked into the information in a photograph that maybe is not necessarily helpful.
Yeah.
So a lot of times if I'm working on something and I'm to the point where it's almost done, I'll just let it ferment for a while in the studio and just look at it. And then you just decide, well, what does it need? Does it need a little punch here? Does it need a little softening there? And I think if you're locked into a photograph, that sometimes you can, get, into unnecessary information.
Yeah.
It becomes sort of, it can become kind of, what's the word? Sort of ununified, and it starts to look like maybe it was painted from a photograph.
Yeah.
And I try to avoid that.
You're trying to take in too much information. It's just muddying.
Yeah, exactly. Less is more.
Oh, yeah, nice, right. Okay, Neil, don't go anywhere.
Okay.
We're going to come back to you. I'm going to pop over to Diana Woods. So, Diana, Teresa Kelly says, hi. Happy to be here with you. Okay, Diana, coming to us from Grand Junction this afternoon. So Diana, you are one of the artists who actually applied to the show not long ago. And I was going to tell you, I really was so attracted to this kind of dreamy quality of the work and the layering that you do. It's sort of like you have so many things to say, and then you're putting them in this sort of patchwork quilt kind of way, collage kind of way with the paint. So I would love to start off by asking you about your style and how you developed this way of putting these pieces together.
Well, I'm not sure how you would pinpoint my style. I always have a hard time with that. I kind of lean toward a little magical realism, but I love working abstractly and I love working in realism. And so I've kind of combined the two. And for instance, a lot of my backgrounds are heavily abstract. And I love using, other instruments and palette knives and my hands, whatever. And I love the abstract expressionist movement, losing myself in those elements. And then I like the contrast of taking an animal and using more of a realism angle with the animal. And it just provides an interesting contrast, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just developed over the years. I rely heavily on narratives and inspired by stories and myths and folklore. And I lose myself when I paint. And the paintings I kind of have an idea of where I'm going when I start, but I let them I allow them to develop on their own.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so before I forget to tell you, Suzanne Maxwell also says hello. So, all right. So, you know what? Now you're going to have to tell us the stories that are behind these paintings and what inspired you, because they are really, there's definitely a story going on in all of your pieces. And can we just talk about Bruno and the Fireflies? First of all, I love that you named this big bear Bruno.
Well, Bruno was a character out of my grandfather's stories. He was a cattle rancher in Whitehall, Montana, in the early 1900s, 1917 to be exact. And he had the greatest stories about life in the West. And one of his greatest characters was Bruno the bear, who would save him from terrible fates. He would be out hunting and he would get lost. And so Bruno would help him find his way home, or he would get stuck in a blizzard and Bruno would keep him warm until the next morning. And so I grew up with Bruno. And in fact, I was shocked to believe he wasn't a real bear when I was about 9. I think my grandfather told me. So he's appeared now in a lot of my pieces. And I love that he's coming through.
Oh, yeah. So let me see. Robin is asking, will the doe and the fireflies be glimpsed as a work in progress? I'm not sure. I do have one that is finished that's here, that's the doe. Okay. With the fireflies, so she'll see that. Okay. So hang on, we'll get to it. Okay, so Bruno and the Fireflies. So was that a story your grandfather also told, or did you?
Yes, it was, and he could weave a story like nobody else, and I've kind of been getting into this magical feeling. I want the viewer to feel a sense of wonder. And he's kind of coming out of the dark, and he's got this presence. And for me, bear energy and bear as a spiritual animal represents strength through adversity, and especially through this year, it was really it was calming for me to paint him, because he represents this strength through adversity. And this has been such a crazy year. And I just wanted to bring his spirit forward in this piece.
Oh, I love that. Well, and you feel it too. You feel like there's this whole delightful story behind it. And I'm glad you told us what it is. Okay, so can we look at Flight? That's over, yeah. And the Garden Club says hi, Diana.
Hello, ladies.
Oh my gosh, so you garden and paint. This is
yes.
Okay, so talk about this. And we're seeing gold leaf there.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah, okay.
Over the years, I have used quite a bit of gold leaf. And it symbolizes for me, I'm attracted to Byzantine art and religious art. And yet what I try to do with my gold leaf is to, instead of using, a Madonna and child as a portrait, my portraits are of animals. So what I'm searching for in my work is a spiritual connection we have with these creatures and with all life forms and nature. And so I used this gold leaf to kind of elevate the piece. And this particular piece is inspired by the iconic wild Mustang named Picasso, who was from the Sandwash Basin in northwestern Colorado. He could still be alive, nobody knows. He's in his 30s now, but he's probably been the most photographed and written about wild horse ever. He has such unique markings, and he was such a great soul. And when I was reading about him, I just kept picturing him, flying. And I've often thought about horses and birds. They kind of have symbiotic relationships. And I wonder if horses feel like they're flying when they jump into the air and leap. And so I just wanted to capture the essence of Picasso and his greatness in this piece.
Wow, you did. I mean, and I love the birds. It is like he's joining them in the sky. It's just really magnificent. And
thank you.
People who have horses or who have horses, they're, I think it's universal. We just love everything about them. And so it's so wonderful to see them elevated in that way that you do with the work. Oh, just beautiful. How sweet.
Thank you.
Hey, so let's talk about Ruby and
the gold leaf, Ruby and the Ravens. And as I was saying earlier, I love using abstracted elements as well as realism. And I also love to capture these symbiotic relationships between species. And I've often seen foxes playing with ravens. And it mesmerizes me. And I just love the stories behind that. So this is Miss Ruby. And this is oil and cold wax. And I like using cold wax added to my oils because it adds this depth and this texture that is unbelievable. It's almost like painting with frosting. And you can get some really interesting textures.
Well, and you can kind of see layers of paint in the layers instead of just knowing that it's layered in there. You can actually kind of start to see the layers, I think.
Right. Yeah, and I love using layer after layer, a lot of underpainting, a lot of scraping, bringing, under layers out, letting them peek through. And that's part of the joy for me of painting.
Oh, yeah. Well, and you can see it, that the work is just joyful. Hey, could we look at The Stars Will Light Your Way? That's another one with, is that gold leaf I'm seeing as well?
Yes, this is gold leaf with on the antlers. And so this is inspired by the myth of Artemis, the Greek goddess of the hunt and of the wild creatures. And her sacred animal was the golden hind, which is a doe with golden antlers. And it could outrun the fastest of arrows. And so I just love the stories in myths. And I just love this story. And a lot of deer with golden antlers have been showing up in my work as well. I had one in the show last year that had golden antlers.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of symbolism and archetypal symbols and things in my work, included in my work.
So until today, I didn't realize that you were really drawing on so much mythology. And I love the stories about your grandfather, bringing that alive. Hey, let's look at Night Garden. I love, love, love. It's so wonderful. And now that I know your garden club says hi, so there's a little extra layer there.
It's right here. And this was inspired by my sister, who has a beautiful flower garden in Western New York. And she told me about one night that she was just blown away by all these fireflies. And they were just everywhere surrounding her and all of her flowers. And I got this image of a deer in her garden, and I painted it for her in a small 12 by 12 for her birthday. And then I loved it so much, I decided to expand on it and make a larger piece.
Wow. So when I'm on the website and looking at your images, and I would really encourage people to go take a look at the images on the website, but I'm seeing in the body of that deer, is that your underpainting coming through, the patterning?
Yes, and there's collage involved in this too.
Oh.
So I did a lot of mixed media with this piece, with collage and oil and cold wax. And I love mixing different elements to produce kind of a magical kind of depth.
Oh, for sure, for sure. That is just beautiful. Okay, so Diana, go nowhere. I'm gonna click over to Sean. Hello, Sean.
Hello. Hi. Hello, Rose. Hello, everybody. Good. How are you?
Good. I'm doing great. So calling in from New Mexico.
Indeed. Yeah. Thanks for putting all this on, Rose, and everybody from the Coors Western Art team. It's an amazing job considering everything that's going on with this particular year, but I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. And you are brand new to the show. And you are one of the artists who you submitted work through our juring process, and you're one that your work really caught my eye.
Thank you very much.
Stand out. I am really looking forward to you talking about who you are, your history, and how you're identifying with the landscape and your subject matter. I'm wondering if you would just kind of catch us up a little bit on that.
Sure. Well, these are my paintings, and I'm a native of New Mexico, and really, in terms of my subject matter, I'm obviously influenced by some of the classical Western historic artists, and however, I'm trying to kind of push that forward a little bit with some of the techniques I use from time to time. And in terms of subject, I'm having grown up here in New Mexico, it's something that I'm, strongly attached to, so much so that you can't really separate the two. And so naturally, that kind of color and that kind of subject matter comes through my painting, basically. And then in terms of some of the people, sometimes I think that, I'm kind of pushing something, maybe a demographic that's maybe not as represented in Western art that I would kind of like to see be done. And it's kind of where to start.
Could you talk about that demographic and why that's important to you?
Sure. Well, obviously, being a native of New Mexico, my last name being Chavez and everything, it's just something that I guess when I was younger, to be honest, something I maybe took for granted, or something that's so close, kind of trying to see the forest through the trees. But as I've matured and gotten older, and I guess more comfortable with myself and the world around me, that it's something that I've found that I really just need to explore, and that's coming through the paintbrush at this point.
And how do you, and when you mean you need to explore, or that you took it for granted, what aspect of it?
Honestly, it probably just youth. Kind of didn't. There was a lens or a filter, let's say, from youth. When you're young, you want to, of course, be the cool skateboarder type, or go to the punk rock concerts and that kind of stuff. But that becomes boring after a while. And really, the most exciting thing is the things that are surrounding you, your family, and the love around you, and the place where you live.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into some of these paintings. And
sure.
You know what? Why don't we talk about the one that's right to your right there at your arm?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is a 16 by 20, and kind of set this up so it's kind of easily shown here on the video.
Nice.
And yeah, all of my paintings basically come in these custom frames that we have made, and got together with a frame maker in my gallery, basically, and worked to create something that's unique to my paintings, and something that highlights them both in terms of being, a little bit on the contemporary side as well as a little bit of the historic side.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Yeah.
And they're hand carved? Are they hand carved?
They're handmade. I wouldn't say hand carved. I'm not sure exactly what all of his techniques are, but we work together to come up with this design. The larger ones, as we get closer, you'll see. I call these ojos, eyes, or suns, souls, perhaps. And the larger ones, they have an ojo in the center part of the frame as well. And on the larger frames, you'll see as we get closer to them, they actually have a name plaque on it with the title of the painting and my name as well. That kind of, yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Nice. Okay, so this is Pecos Vaquero, right?
Yes, yes, and this is a local here in Santa Fe, and he's been super generous and really willing to kind of work with me in terms of being a model. And we've scheduled a tentative opportunity out on his property too, with some of his horses and stuff, so we can look forward to more of Randy in the future.
And you know what? Just definitely take a look at the website, because you can see much more of what's happening in that on the website. It's just lovely. And you're also, like Diana, you are also using really wonderful abstractions to accentuate what you want the conversation to be about. I'm wondering if you talk a little bit about that.
Sure, I love abstraction. However, I find it really difficult, honestly, because it's sort of like I need a boundary, perhaps. And so having some sort of representational subject in my paintings allow me to explore the abstraction that's available with paint as well. So it ends up kind of being a mixture. I think I've tried abstract painting, and it's very, very difficult for me.
It is,
But,
isn't it?
yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
But yeah, this allows me a good, happy medium really to kind of accomplish both to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And really, in truth, representational art is abstraction as well.
Of course, right? Yeah, right. It's just how our minds sort of put it all together for us. So, hey, can we look at this really big painting, The Wanderers? In your wonderful gallery, Acosta Strong Fine Art says hi and love the authenticity. And I agree 100% with that comment. Really,
thank you very much.
Authentic work. So, yeah. So The Wanderers, that's perfect right there.
And I was going to show you that little name plaque down there for a moment.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But yeah, this is 36 by 48, and this basically depicts, a sheep herder, I suppose morning or evening, kind of collecting a couple of wanderers, a couple of vagabonds that have kind of wandered off on their own. And I guess maybe that title could be a little bit of an allegory for the human figure in it as well. Yeah. That the question is, who is the wanderer? And
I love something really that may be overlooked in this painting, but it's just such a simple little thing that you did. But the hunched shoulders of this sheep herder, it's it just brings in this kind of the wandering, but maybe sort of something about being absolutely part of the landscape, maybe a weariness of the job and the land, but just being really part of, all these shapes create this whole conversation about this scene right here.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you'll notice that on all of these paintings, the face of the figure is always kind of abstracted or hidden and not fully seen, and that's sort of to allow the viewer to potentially, I don't know, maybe put themselves into the painting or to finish part of the story for me.
Oh, nice.
Little mystery in there.
I like that. Hey, could we take a look at some of the other pieces that you have?
Sure. Yeah, the next one we have here is Headed Out, or Going to Work. And this is 30 by 30.
Wow.
And I think you can get a pretty good name. Look at that nameplate from here. But.
And I really like that. I mean, you're definitely, we do have some artists who paint cowboys, like Willie Matthews, of course, comes to mind right away. And he's painting his friends and the many people he knows. And you are painting the Vaquero. That's a very distinct cowboy of the South of Mexico and the West.
Well, the first cowboy, truly. And so just trying to pay a little bit of homage to that in the mythology of the Vaquero before the cowboy.
How much of this, like with the hats and the garb, how much of this is you just know about, or it's from family, or did you have any family, or?
Yeah, certainly. I'm trying to research some more of that, but I have grown up with some members of my family that were gun carrying types with sombreros and that kind of thing. Still trying to find those particular books again. I'm not sure where those are right now, but it is something that I research. A lot of the materials or the garb that they're wearing are things that I have around in my studio that I'm in the process of gathering and the process of making. And of course, doing historical research as well. As time goes on, I'm able to kind of afford more authentic and more expensive and more antique items. So that's kind of
nice. Well, Shane Weigand has added in here with a comment. The design on the hat band is a 10 out of 10.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and Ginny Gulikowski loved the cloud work. I agree. Yeah, so, okay. The brave one.
The brave one, yes. El Valiente. This is some sort of, a lot of times actually, I guess 2 out of 3 animals in this series are mules. Again, sort of like the Vaquero being the original cowboy, I really see that the mule is kind of really the true workhorse of the West. The horse kind of gets a lot of credit, to be honest, but I think that any true vaquero knows that the burro and the mule are probably a little preferred over the horse in terms of being there for you all the time. They're much more dexterous on rougher terrain, which you can see depicted in this painting. I don't think that was something that you would comfortably do on a horse as you would on a mule.
Yeah, interesting. And I really love the patterning that you're getting in the backgrounds too. You're just moving that paint around a lot, but then, you're that wonderful, I'm just going to throw it out there, that wonderful Wayne Thiebaud kind of outlining of stuff that just adds this extra little layer to the conversation. It's just so wonderful.
Yeah, a lot of times what I'll do is you can see that for the most part the paintings have a subdued palette, but you'll see that the cartoons, another name you could name it, around the cloud, which is an early art term, or the scarf, using just that little bit of color really ends up popping the painting in comparison to the rest of the palette. That's sort of a limited palette.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, and then we've got Grande Alturas. So when you come up with, or when you walk into the studio and you pop a canvas on the easel, what inspires you?
Just being there and doing the work, really. I think that is a pretty good philosophy. If you're not necessarily feeling up to it that day, the most important thing to really do is to do the work. Once you get motivated and once you start moving, then the rest of it just really kind of inspires itself and kind of becomes an echo chamber.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so I don't go anywhere, actually. Wait, can you believe it? It's 12:52. So I love to start to kind of wrap these conversations up a little bit by having each of you tell us how you got here today. And what I'm wondering is if you would just talk a little bit about your background, your education, and Sean, since we're on you, would you kick it off? And really, I'm like, your background, your education, but what brought you here to this work?
I think that I've always known and really have always been an artist. There was a period, again, during my youth where I think I was a little naive in what that meant and how much work that might have been, and the rest of life that was to be lived. But I knew always that at some point I would be returning to that. And basically that's kind of what's been happening for the last 4 years or so. Last 2 years kind of being 100% professional in that. But it's just, it's something that nothing would change what I'm doing, basically. No matter where I am or what I'm doing, this is who I am.
So what were you doing before that you?
Sure, I'm a trained graphic artist, actually, and have been doing that for 15, 20 years or maybe something like that, which really helped to make the transition to this type of work professionally. And I guess somewhat ironically, I was about 2 weeks out from graduation and my portfolio was heavy on illustration, and someone broke into a vehicle of mine and basically stole all my artwork. So my portfolio ended up being design heavy. Otherwise, I don't know where I would be right now. I'd be in the same place, drawing pictures and painting things, but maybe in a slightly different place. Interesting little story.
Oh, it's always like, especially with artists, the fickle finger of fate, and
I would say I can't be any happier or any more pleased or ask for anything more. I'm in my happy place, and this is an amazing experience.
Well, I'm going to give a little plug for graphic designers everywhere. They are some of my favorite artists to work with. You guys know how to hit a deadline and you show up for work essentially, and you meet my deadlines. And on top of it, from drawing and designing nonstop and under pressure, I mean, you really have all the tools in the tool chest to do it. And then once you make the move away from illustration, it's just amazing what happens. And then you get to be your own boss in a way. And I think the artists who don't leave illustration behind are the ones who just really have a more difficult time being their own boss, which, I mean, like, I think all three of these artists today have said, it's really you get your butt in the studio. You, like Neil was saying, you are out there in January painting the boundary waters. You know what, Neil? Let's go to you. Tell me how you got here.
Yeah. So I went to, backing up a little bit to like junior high school. I always had an interest in, capturing imagery that I would see out in nature, and never quite sure. I thought maybe photography or something like that would work, but I always gravitated toward painting. So I went to a small liberal arts school, St. John's University. It's a Benedictine school in central Minnesota. Not, when you're 18, you kind of go. Yeah, I went there because I could play basketball, not necessarily an art school. But I studied art there, and what I realized after graduating was, and what I realized what I was craving during the time there was, I didn't really have a firm understanding of how to make a landscape painting, which is really what I wanted to do. And they didn't have, I was really interested in sort of the really detailed kind of atelier type training, very rigid, very realistic. That's what I was sort of craving in my college years. I had one teacher there that really inspired me with my nighttime work, who was a representational painter. He sort of gave me a little insight into site size painting, which is, where you're measuring and calculating, and it's very, very accurate. But once I got out of college, there was a little period there where I just, I kind of floundered. I didn't know how to do a painting. I remember sitting on this above this river on a river ledge and trying to do a painting of a pine tree, and I just about threw my stuff into the river because I couldn't figure it out. Wow. Years later, a girl I was dating sent me an article in the newspaper that was talking about Robert Bateman, who was a pretty well-known wildlife artist who I was interested at the time, and he was talking about the value of classical training, which I was interested in. And the article listed a school in Burnsville, Minnesota, which is a suburb of Minneapolis, that offered that kind of training. And so I ordered a catalog, and in the catalog, in a little, 1 inch by 2 inch black and white photo in the course description was a painting by this artist named Joe Paquette. And I saw that painting in that little format and thought, oh, that's really how I want to paint. So, I think this was in 97 that I started taking classes with him at the school, just part-time. I studied with him part-time for almost 7 years, just taking painting classes and drawing classes. And then, that's kind of how I learned to paint. I really credit him with giving me the skills and the insight on how to capture landscape painting. And I think maybe he was one of the artists that you had talked to about, getting into the Coors show. And then ended up in Grand Marais. At the time I was studying, I was working at a picture framing shop in Minneapolis. When I was done with taking classes with Joe, I didn't have any particular interest in staying in Minneapolis, but there was a gallery in Grand Marais that was looking to hire a picture framer. And so I applied and got that job. And that was 15 years ago that I moved to Grand Marais. And I love it here. It's great. And it's been, art has really changed my life.
Wow. And yes, it is Joe Peckett who told me about you for sure. And what a good guy. And honestly, I know part of Joe's philosophy in teaching and working with artists is not to get them to paint like he paints or what he paints, but to give you tools, right? And I mean, talk about a really wonderful person to pair up with to get you over that frustration level and to give you the confidence and set you out on your path.
Yeah. He and I share a lot of similarities, not just in stature, but in, he was an athlete in college and I was an athlete. So we shared a lot of commonalities outside of artwork that I think, go into aspects of being an artist, discipline and hard work. And we shared a lot of that sort of stuff. So, there's a handful of people that I can count that were highly influential in my life, and that he's one of them.
Yeah. Oh, that's perfect. Diana, tell us how you got here.
Well, as soon as I could pick up a pencil, I started drawing horses because I was just crazy about them. And when I was about 9, we moved out to the country and my dream came true. So I started writing and showing, and I always kept up with my painting of horses and drawing. And then I went to college and got my Bachelor of Fine Arts degree at William Woods College in Missouri, and also studied equestrian studies as well. And as soon as I left Missouri, I headed west. I had to be in the West. And so I moved to Montana, northwestern Montana, where I could paint wildlife and ski and hike and, enjoy the beautiful scenery. And lived there for a number of years, and then moved with my then husband to Western Colorado, to Grand Junction. And we were working for the BLM in the forest fire program. And I started, because working for the BLM, I went on a roundup and I got to see the wild horses at a roundup. And it was really kind of shocking, kind of scary, and sad to see these bands of horses, broken up and these little families broken up and adopted out, but inspired me so much to want to paint them. And since then, I've lived here since '84, and I ride my own horses up there and see the wild horses as much as I can. I hike a lot. But it was a circuitous route. I was raising my children, and I was working as an arts administrator in various nonprofits. And I was an art teacher. And about '96 was when I built my studio. And started really, saying, okay, this is it. I'm going to get some galleries. And that was when I got really serious about professionally working in the arts industry. And I've been just plugging away ever since.
Wow. And I love that your route has just allowed you to follow your heart and follow your bliss and just paint what is coming out from you and tell these stories. I'm so glad that you told us about the stories too. It's also been so much fun for that. To hear everybody's stories. So I have one last question for everybody, and that is just, do you have any questions or comments for each other? And by the way, Shelley Lentz says, Diana, your sisters are all happily watching. You all have done a beautiful job. Gentlemen and Diana, any comments or questions for each other as we wrap it up?
I'd like to say that, I really enjoy going to the show in Denver, but it's always hard to chat with other artists because, you're busy talking to people interested in your paintings. And I've watched some of these other chats, and I really feel like, even though I've never met Sean or Diana, I look forward to shaking your hands, hopefully at the next year at the show or some other place, because I really feel like This has been such a great way to get to know other artists, and I just love the insight you have in your works. And so I just feel like even though we're virtual, I kind of feel like I know you a little bit deeper, if that's not too corny.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, that's great. I've really enjoyed the whole process, and getting to be familiar with a lot of the artists that are in the Coors Western show, including Diana and Neil, and to be here, it's just a pleasure, and I really do enjoy both of your works. I really love the poignant little video with the Swans. I think that as much as Swans might like artists, I think they must obviously love to be stars as well. And Diana, I was curious in terms of the abstraction that you start with and working towards working in an actual figure or something into your paintings. Do you have an idea of what kind of representation you're going to put in there from the very beginning, or is it just pure abstraction when you first start?
Well, it is pure abstraction when I first start, and I kind of have an idea of the palette that I'm going to use. I pre-mix and get a bunch of paint mixed up so that I can work really fast. But I usually have some kind of story that's burning to be painted, and that's usually what comes out. So I have something in the back of my mind that I know I want to get on canvas. But the first stage of the abstraction is just, I totally lose myself. I just kind of crank the music up and go for it.
Cool.
And I want to thank you guys and Rose. This has been amazing. I am such a fan of both your works. And Sean, I love your mid-range palette and the old and the new, bringing those together. It's just phenomenal. And Neil, I love your plein air work. It's just, I feel like I'm there. I really do. It's gorgeous. And Rose, this has just been incredible. Thank you so much for doing this.
You know, I have to tell you, people always say, oh, that's a lot of work. And I'm like, is it though? I'm truly having so much fun. And as we start to wrap up and thank all of you participating and attending, I just want to read some more of the comments coming in. Teresa Kelly writes, the art means so much more when you have context and the stories of the artist. Thank you. I agree 100%. That's why this has been so much fun to do. Nancy Bemis says, thank you to all the artists today. Your art and your stories are amazing. Thank you for sharing. Janet Grant, love this. Teresa Kelly, I will hear your voices when I look at the art. Yeah, right? Of course. Diana Fritzler, love this. Excellent job by all. Acosta Strong, fine art. Great job, Rose. Oh, you're welcome. Truly enjoyed it. Charlie Quimby, so nice to hear from artists who work visually. I spend a lot of time with writers. Yeah, this is just so much fun, and really, truly, all of you, thank you so much. A few quick housekeeping items. All the work is on the CoorsWesternArt.com website, so please go there and click on it. Hopefully, you have a better sense of scale. This conversation, it has been recorded. It will go to edit, and in the next 2 to 3 days, it will be up on our website. So those are on the CoorsWesternArt.com under the About, and if you go to Catalog, and you can click on all the past conversations we have. We've got a great lineup still to come, so sign up for those. We'd love to have you for any and all of those conversations. Tomorrow's is at 6 p.m. You can start bidding on art December 18th. If you go to our website and click on the artwork, it will take you to HandBid, which is the online software system that we are using. Everything this year is going to be done virtually and remotely. So we're using this online platform. It's going to be essentially a huge silent auction, which was the fairest way we could see to do it. There's no cost. You just have to sign up and register. and then you can start bidding. You can like works. And then when you do bid on things, it's, I think the best way to kind of explain it's a little like eBay. So you will get a ping when somebody bids on something you're interested in, so you can kind of stay in touch. Everything culminates on January 5th, which is Tuesday. That would have been our red carpet reception. We're going to have a little video presentation with some really cool videos. We've just done some really fun things, and it's going to be short. It's not going to take up your night, but just kind of register and tune in January 5th. We're going to announce Best of Show winners, and we have a number of other awards that we're going to be announced that night as well. So I just want to thank everyone one more time. Sean, Diana, Neil, you all are just so very wonderful, and I wish I could see you in January, but 2022, okay? We'll get together then, I promise. And for all of you listening in, thank you. And I appreciate your comments, and just the last couple, Christine Brown, so very interesting. I learned so much. Kathy Weinberg, thank you all. So glad for the recognition of Picasso. Great interviews. And Brian Hansel, thanks everyone. So anyway, you all take care, stay warm this winter, and we will see you online. Love you guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Been wonderful.